Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. There are 3 million New Yorkers who were born in another country. That's 4 in every 10. And if you count the children of immigrants, it's 6 of 10. That's the largest number ever in New York and a proportion of the population that rivals the great waves of immigration in the early 20th century. New York is truly the world's second home and always has been. To talk with us about Immigrant New York, its trials, its triumphs, and to talk about immigrants, their needs, and New York City's government's response to these needs is Fatima Shama, the Commissioner of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. Ms. Shama previously served as Senior Education Policy Advisor in the Mayor's Office, leading in the areas of healthcare services and language access. Prior to joining the Bloomberg administration in 2006, she was the executive director of the Greater Brooklyn Health Coalition. Her greatest accomplishment, however, is that she got an A in the Leadership and Strategy course she took with me at the School of Public Affairs at Baruch College. Welcome, Fatima.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
In the press release that announced your appointment on August 12th, it calls you uniquely qualified, and I can vouch for your intellectual abilities and social skills. Okay. You speak how many languages?
5 and English.
6.
6. French,
Italian, Arabic, Portuguese, and Spanish, as well as English.
Right. So each of them at different fluency levels, but yeah.
So when you go out into communities, you literally can talk their language.
I try to.
Also, you are the daughter of immigrants. Mm-hmm. You were born in the Bronx, mm-hmm. but very interesting combo, mm-hmm. a Brazilian mother and your late father, Palestinian. What was it like to live in an immigrant household in the Bronx?
So I think most children of immigrant kids have this experience of, we're actually not fundamentally Americans in our parents' eyes because they haven't necessarily integrated fully, mm-hmm. certainly the generation that my parents were a part of. But in our own eyes, we're so American. And so it was this idea of this hyphenation of being sort of hyphenated American, to me was really true.
And you, as an American looking at your parents as newcomers, was there, and your peers, looking at them differently and perhaps less favorably because they weren't Americans?
No. I mean, I think I have to say now, I actually look back and think how amazingly brave my parents were.
Sure.
And how entrepreneurial and their own desire to succeed and to help us succeed, right? Their desire to come here was truly because they recognized the full opportunity. And when you're a kid growing up around that, you actually unfortunately didn't get it. I just benefited from thinking that and I came from a house that spoke different languages and came from 2 different places.
Wow.
And so summer vacations, we would go visit respective families in different countries that were so different. But I sort of thought that was normal,
right?
Until I realized it wasn't.
Not at all.
And then,
but increasingly so.
But then you're from New York, and
right.
So it sort of seems like it is normal in New York, except when you leave New York and it isn't so normal.
Right. Okay. You're on the job 4 months.
Yeah.
What's it been like? Talk about the transition from City Hall as a policy advisor to running an agency.
So first, it's awesome, right? It's such an incredible opportunity. The uniquely qualified, I think I'll say, the one thing in my resume that has this identifiable strain is that I have always worked for and on behalf of immigrants. My first job out of college, every single job that I've worked on thereafter, it's always been, whether it's been reproductive rights for women and girls, in North African and African countries, to working around on public health issues in Brooklyn. It's always been looking at
And
vulnerable
even when you worked at
populations.
at the mayor's office in
Right.
terms of education,
Right.
you
Right.
dealt with
Right.
stuff all the time
Right.
that dealt with immigrants.
Right, absolutely.
You can't help it.
No, and it's who I am, right? So the fact that I grew up in this household, unbeknownst to what was going to happen to me professionally, my observation of my parents and their desires to succeed and their challenges, and oftentimes being their own translators, has definitely informed, who I think I've become. So when you're in City Hall and you serve as an advisor, your real job is to keep pulse on things that are happening nationally, on the state level, locally, make sure that you're keeping your boss, right? So I worked for Deputy Mayor Dennis Walcott, making sure that I kept Deputy Mayor Walcott abreast of all education stuff. I've served as liaison to the Department of Education, a huge department, truly impactful in the lives of every New Yorker. So you just needed to be on all the time. But you didn't run things. You could imagine, you could observe, you could analyze, you could critique, question, do all of that kind of stuff. But you don't run things because you're not at an agency.
You're not administrating,
right?
Or implementing.
No, and so the real difference here is that you go into an agency, and all of those things you actually have imagined you now have the chance to do. And that's pretty awesome.
What was the biggest surprise to you? You're coming out of the mayor's office. You've got various education degrees, and you know the theories, etc. What was the biggest surprise, or what has been so far the biggest surprise?
So I'll tell you, I don't know if this has been the biggest surprise, but I've worked in topical areas. So I've done workforce development, I've done education, I've done healthcare or public health work. And when I did when I worked in those organizations or running those topical areas, that's what I did, right? So you can fully absorb it. But now, it's immigrant affairs. It's everything that impacts immigrants. And so I remember I was appointed and then had the opportunity to take a break with my family before I actually started. And had my BlackBerry, and as my BlackBerry, emails were coming in. There's a Department of Buildings issue that impacts immigrants. We were getting, there was a lawsuit against the city around language access issues, around human services. There was the impact of low-wage immigrant workers. And the true breadth of what touches immigrants' lives shouldn't have been a surprise, but the sort of opportunity, but not getting overwhelmed by the actual magnitude was a bit of the surprise.
What's been the hardest thing for you in terms of coming in and running an agency? Particularly an agency, as all city agencies, when you come in, are already staffed, they have certain standard operating procedures, certain cultures. Talk about that.
So I'll talk about what I think has been a little difficult, and then I'll talk about the sort of culture of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. So coming in, part of our work is to truly be a community relations, community affairs arm in some regard to immigrant communities. We serve on behalf of the Mayor's Office as a liaison to immigrant communities, to really have a pulse on what they're experiencing, what's going on, and sort of relaying that back to the administration.
And the various city agencies.
And my colleagues in different agencies. Then there's the desire and the need to absolutely better everything we do for immigrants, right? So there's going out into community and maintaining those relationships, and for me, it's meeting them, right? Because this is their chance to meet me.
And that must be constant.
It's constant. Constant and exciting and wonderful, but there's work to be done. And so the managing of my time and the managing of priorities is, I think, so far, that has been the challenge of making sure that we are committed and with our eye on the prize of what needs to get done to make lives of immigrants better in New York City, coupled with they need to know who I am so that they trust government, so that they know that what we aim to do truly is to better their lives. And so it's that relationship.
So I can use this in my next leadership and strategy course.
What's that?
Give me Shama's rule of bureaucratic behavior or running an agency. One rule that you sort of developed over the last couple of months.
Oh gosh, I don't know if I have a rule yet, but I'll tell you that I think no matter how complicated or challenging something might seem, there is always opportunity. And so in every instance that we have discussed or know that immigrants have challenges, I think there is always an opportunity. And so for me, I don't want to get caught up in the sort of drudgery of we can't do this. So my rule is don't tell me we can't do it until we've tried.
Okay. What do you like least? I know you love this.
Right.
What do you like least about your job in terms of sort of the day-to-day, week-to-week operation of the agency or your schedule?
I probably don't have something I like least, but for me, the exciting part is the work.
Right.
It's the absolute work. It's the absolute rolling up our sleeves, figuring out what the problems are, identifying the solutions, thinking about how do we strategize and make this better, working with my colleagues. That to me is the exciting part. But meeting the people that we know whose lives are going to be impacted are also so exciting. I like least when I have to stop what I'm doing,
okay,
and then have to rush out because then I feel like the flow is interrupted.
Okay.
And so,
but
they're important.
But you're on all the time.
But we're on all the time.
24/7. You've got your BlackBerry. You're there.
Right.
Okay. Let's shift a little bit from sort of you and the agency and move a little bit into the larger picture, immigrant politics. We just had the election of the first Asian American citywide candidate. We've got this bubbling up of immigrant candidates throughout the city, and not only bubbling up, but winning seats.
Yeah.
Talk about sort of the immigrant dynamic here politically.
I mean, this is the story of New York, right? For me, it's not only the story of this city, but it's the story of this country, right? We know immigrants come in search of opportunity. Sometimes they come actually as a result of failed governments and are running from governments. And so the mere idea that so many immigrants have integrated so comfortably and are now part of the fabric of the city and moving into government positions is such a critically important story to tell. John Liu's winning the election, a citywide election for controller, is such an incredible moment for immigrants in the city and, immigrants in this country, because it is the story of what his parents dreamed, when they arrived here. This opportunity and desire to see all that you can be, sort of borrowing the tagline, if you will, has come true. And I think he is going to serve as such a role model. And you're going to see that in the city council. We're already seeing that.
Right.
The number of immigrants who will or are being sworn into their new council seats.
From all over.
From all over. And it's super exciting. And you're only going to see more of it. And the future of New York is just going to get more colorful and more beautiful. And you're going to actually see, I hope anyway, the children of immigrants become more integrated into the civic and political engagement process. And as a result of that, you're going to really hear the myriad voices that need to be represented in city government, and hopefully beyond.
Okay. Let's talk about the mayor's office specifically. What's your charge? What's your mandate? What's your mission?
So we are charged with serving as the critical liaison, right? The liaison to immigrant communities, having those conversations, bringing back what we hear, and implementing programs and policies as a result of that.
So you're dealing with individuals, communities, nonprofits, government agencies,
all
everything.
of the above, right?
Okay.
Stakeholders at large.
Okay.
Right. So if it touches immigrants, we're talking to them. Right. So whether
It's
it's
a big
other
portfolio.
It's huge.
How do you prioritize what you're doing given what is really a relatively small staff, given the hugeness of the population and their problems, if you will, their obstacles, their challenges?
So I would say that there are a number of people who come to us, and so we've got who I will call a lot of partners out there, whether they're the advocates or the faith leaders or the community leaders who really do let us know what's happening. My peers in government, right? So all of the agency heads, in their own regard, serving New Yorkers, they're definitely serving immigrants, will likely hear similarly some of what these issues might be. And so it's this shared conversation and this constant we've got to remind ourselves to always remain in constant conversation to make sure that, one, we're actually listening and responding to all
So
the
you're
needs.
dealing with other city agencies either on a commissioner's level or a staff level all the time, every day.
Right. And if we're not, we should be, right? So that's absolutely critically important as part of our portfolio and mandate.
What are the most pressing challenges facing the immigrants? And clearly we're dealing with a hugely diverse and various population. I mean, they're not at all similar socioeconomically, ethnically, racially, etc. But what are the principal challenges facing them? And then what are the principal challenges facing you as an agency?
So, I mean, you're right? The group that we're talking about is so diverse, right? We're talking about immigrants who have been here for years.
Right.
We're talking about immigrants who are newly arrived that may be legal permanent residents. We're talking about immigrants who may be here for many years but are undocumented, and some of the new arrivals that are undocumented.
Right.
So it's this big audience of people, all of whom matter a great deal to us all the time. Each group, I think, has their own challenge. Mm-hmm. Some of it, I think, we would identify as, the language barriers, right? So we, in the city, have aimed to resolve that, where we have the mayor signed into law June of 2008, an executive order, quite honestly, a leading moment for municipalities in New York City, truly being at the head of this charge.
This is Executive Order 120.
Right.
And that does what? Let's a little bit talk about city policy towards it.
Right. So we'll talk about two really important things.
41 and 120.
Right. So 120 is the language access order, where all city agencies that provide direct services have to provide services, translate and interpret for the clients they serve. Right, and so there are 6 most commonly spoken languages in the city. For some of those agencies, they're a little different. So the agencies have to identify what those are. Each agency is different. All of what they do is different. The breadth of their work, the scope of their work. So TLCs, the Taxi Limousine Commission's work and their language access agenda looks very different from the Department of Education.
Sure.
That said, they both have language access implementation plans that they're working on, which is a huge moment for New York, where we want to ensure that all New Yorkers, irrespective of their English capacity, are accessing city services, right? So that's Executive Order 120.
Okay,
right?
let's start with 41, because in a sense,
41.
Executive Order 41 is the basis of all of this.
So in 2003, the mayor signed into law Executive Order 34 and 41. They're coupled. And that is our city's confidentiality policy, which is no city employee has the right to ask any New Yorker a series of questions about that would impact their privacy. Documentation status being one of them, right? So when you go to enroll your child in our schools, nobody should be asking you whether you are legally here or not. It might become evident in some of the paperwork you're sharing with us.
Sure.
That employee of the city has basically a responsibility to do nothing with that information other than keep it confidential and serve that client and serve that New Yorker appropriately.
Now, city policy can, and not only New York City policy, but other cities' policies can conflict with national policy. Mm-hmm. I presume that 41 meets a U.S. constitutional test?
So we in the city of New York recognize ourselves as a sanctuary city, which many cities don't do. No, I mean, I don't. We have the right and the responsibility, and we reserve New York City, Mayor Bloomberg being one, but many mayors who precede him, have all reserved the responsibility in the city of New York to maintain the confidentiality of all New Yorkers.
And that's not in violation of any...
We haven't
Okay.
been. The only question arises in the instance of criminal activity.
Right.
And so in that regard, when someone is charged and convicted of a criminal crime, of a criminal offense, then we have the responsibility to share their information with the federal government.
Okay.
And documentation status becomes one of those questions.
Okay. In your remarks at your appointment, you talked about, quote, enhancing the administration's conversation with communities. How?
So you know me, but I
Yes.
right
14 weeks for what?
Right.
7 hours a day?
a day. I think the only way that we will fundamentally better understand what people need and what we need to do about it is by engaging in a robust conversation. The goal here is that we have done a tremendous amount for immigrants in this city, and it's truly been under the leadership of Mayor Bloomberg. There's still a great amount to do. We still have New Yorkers who fear government tremendously and don't access city services or don't access government, or when they're a victim of a crime, don't come forward because they fear the immigration, aspects of fear, deportation, immigrant rights, all of those things become real.
Sure.
And we've got a responsibility as the City of New York, as government officials, to help help immigrants understand what their rights are,
Sure.
what their roles are, what their responsibilities are, what their opportunities are. There's a tremendous number of opportunities around civic engagement that immigrants could be involved in. We've got to be a part of that conversation, engage in a robust discussion to help our stakeholders, all of them, help us in sort of spreading this message a bit better.
Let's now turn to national immigration reform. What can we expect out of the Obama administration? What's the buzz? Is there going to be legislation in January to reintroduce national immigration reform?
So this has been something any number of people, least of whom is Mayor Bloomberg, has talked about, right? The mayor has consistently talked about the importance for reforming a broken system, right? New York, we know that New York needs more immigrants, not less. We know the impact that immigrants have had in the city, and I'd submit that we know that on a national level as well. And certainly this administration, and Bush attempted as well, but the Obama administration has made a complete commitment to trying to do something about immigration reform.
Okay, a commitment to do. What's the commitment? Are they going to do it?
So Secretary Napolitano had this, sort of landmark speech in November, talking about this administration commits itself and is pledged to doing something around immigration reform. We're going to, and she laid out any number of things. We understand that Senator Schumer is actually the lead on proposing a bill
in the Senate.
The discussion is that it'll happen in early winter, or at some point in the winter, the start of 2010.
So this will reemerge and fairly quickly.
So we have a good sense that this is coming to fruition. We're very excited about it. The healthcare debate has been has been longer than anyone anticipated and more volatile.
And froze the discussion on all these other issues.
And has actually impacted immigrants tremendously.
That's true, too.
In not the best way.
Right.
And so I think many of us who are observing what's happening in D.C. and optimistic about what the future looks like for immigrants on a national level do expect and anticipate something's going to happen. What that something is, I don't know if we know yet.
Okay. Let's move to the real local level. CUNY, in a sense, is a model, first of all, in terms of its diversity and its immigrant population, but also in terms of its outreach. Can you talk about the role of CUNY and other universities in this process?
So we're talking. We'll flip a little onto a national issue, which is the DREAM Act. Right. So the DREAM Act is an act that sits within the Senate today. That has for years. Right? So I want to say 2002 or 2001 it was sort of introduced. And actually in 2007 we got very close to getting something quite tangible. But so the DREAM Act fundamentally is a law that would impact the number of undocumented children, young people that have been in this country for years, who graduate from American high schools, go on to college and complete a minimum of 2 years of college and or serve in the military. And then, based on a number of criteria, demonstrate good moral character to get onto the road to citizenship. Critically important, right? These young people who have been here for years, and the number is outrageous, in the millions. And New York has a good number of those folks. it's critical, right? They are the future of this country. They are the future of this city. Many of these young people only know this country as their home, and so fundamentally recognize themselves as Americans, but don't have the documentation status.
Sure.
And so what we have actually in New York City, rare, is CUNY, which is a model of a city university system that has fundamentally recognized that every student who graduates from a New York City public high school, whether they are documented or not, right, we don't care about their documentation status, has the opportunity to go on to higher education possibilities. We don't have that in other municipalities.
Sure.
We don't even have that on the state level. The very interesting aspect here is that CUNY also allows these kids to participate in the scholarship opportunities. And so Macaulay's Honors College, for example, the Macaulay Honors College, or I understand the Peter Vallone Scholarship, which is open to all students, right? So, we don't know who, in fact, in CUNY falls within this undocumented, documented, because everyone is recognized. That isn't what happens on the state level and in many other city or state university systems. And we actually would love to see a recognition of, if we are telling our young people, no matter who they are, to dream and to go on to achieve, whether it's the American dream or succeed to become tomorrow's doctors and engineers and leaders and governors and all, and the possibilities are endless, then we've got to institute and allow them to succeed and move on to the sort of next opportunities in education.
Thank you.
So
thank you. My thanks to Commissioner Fatima Shama for being my guest today. Next week, we'll talk about the facts, fictions, and possible futures of the U.S. information media with Professor Eli Noem. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at cuny.tv. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.